5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, somebody struggling with a microphone?
I don't know.
I
Maybe.
heard it too, but I'm fine, so.
Huh.
Hmm.
Like, oh well. Welcome to another installment of Fragments Silicon Reviews. This week we have two games to review. First up is Stick It to the Man. I suppose this one's a bit of a curio because, well, it's kind of old. Kind of real old, if I'm being honest. Checking up on the release date, at least like the Steam version, it was released in 2013.
Huh.
Yeah. And saw it roll out on a whole host of other platforms in like 2014, I think. Now, the point is, it's a game that's 3-4 years old at this point. Usually we don't go out of our way to review games that old, but the dev provided it. We interviewed them about a month and a half ago. It's been a significant amount of time, and yeah, this review's been on the back burner because, well, not for nothing, because it's a game that came out in 2008. It's like it's something we get to. It's just when we have games that are fresh and new, they take prioritization. But here we are at last, having I suppose a big enough release gap in brand new material to review this particular title.
Yep.
So I suppose we should get right into it in terms of describing the game.
So this kind of reminds me of a game we reviewed pretty recently.
Which one was that?
The Inner World.
I can sort of see where you're coming from here in terms of it's got a literal papercraft art style.
Yeah.
But like it's
and the same sort of surreal environment.
Yeah. That being said, its actual like art aesthetic is very different from the Inner World.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's the same. It just reminded me of it a little.
Yeah, like I said, I can definitely see where you're coming from here, especially since, well, in real terms, this game is almost a point-and-click adventure game.
Yeah, it's a platforming adventure game, but most of it is the pointing and clicking.
Yeah, it's its technical definition would be a puzzle platformer. But like heavy emphasis on the puzzle part, because I'll be upfront right now. The worst part was the actual platforming.
Like the platforming is not complicated, but the controls are also not perfect.
Yeah, like the controls are intentionally bad, from what I could gather. It's like Ray just can't jump good,
right?
And that kind of actually factors into the platforming.
Yeah, well, he can get his feet as high as his head, which is pretty good in real life.
True.
But he's certainly no Mario.
Yeah. It's like it's not a game I'd actually recommend for its platforming. That's for sure.
No, it's more like an adventure game where the platformer style is just the interface.
Yes. I'm like,
because the mechanic of this game is Ray gets conked on the head by a mysterious secret capsule and gets something in his brain that gives him what he calls a spaghetti arm that looks nothing like spaghetti to me. That lets him do a few things. It's a transparent purple arm, tentacle arm growing out of his head that lets him grapple to literal thumbtacks in the scenery, which helps with the platforming. And it also gives him the ability to read people's minds and pick up objects and stick them in other places, including objects that are sometimes people's thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's where the adventure game puzzles come from.
Yeah. Your main objective is you're going to be gathering stickers. Like the thought bubbles actually produce stickers. Like
it's not just the thought bubbles either. Sometimes it's actual physical objects.
True. Like I said, this isn't going for literal papercraft here, which actually gives it something in common with like Paper Mario, of all things. No.
Yeah, they don't reference the fact that they're made out of paper, really, but the world definitely functions as though it's made out of cardboard cutouts and stuff.
Yeah, like another example is the checkpoint system. They're literal copy machines. It's like when you like die, you get another ray scribbled out, literally scribbled out.
Yeah, another one gets printed out of a copy machine and then automatically cuts itself out around the outlines.
Yeah, it's a nice touch, I suppose. Like, yeah. Also worth noting that, like, in between, I suppose, the point and click areas, you will deal with like action sequences. A few levels ahead, like I think starting with like chapter 3, you'll start having to deal with agents.
Yeah, who are men in black who want to recover whatever you've got inside your head now, presumably. They are means of taking it out of you violently. Basically, they chase you around, and if they catch you, they stab you with a taser, and then you respawn.
And you don't have any weapons. You have no way of eliminating them. The best you can do is like if you read the thoughts of some of the agents, the tired ones, they'll produce
sleepy thoughts.
Yeah, sleepy thoughts.
Which you can paste onto them to make them fall asleep.
And later on, you can also use Ray. They'll think of Ray's face. You can put that on an agent, and they'll go chase that guy.
So basically, you can avoid them, and you can kind of distract them, but you can't actually defeat them.
Right. And
which makes going backwards through areas difficult sometimes.
Yes. Unless you make sure to open up the quick access tubes, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the level I was just in didn't have one of those, but you never actually had to go back to the first part of the level.
It had one. It's just it didn't. Yeah, you didn't have to go back to the first part.
Yeah, you didn't have to go back past the part where the first sleepy guard.
Anything where basically the point and click part happens, you'll have quick access to. Like, you don't need to run through the let's call them action sequences more than once if you make sure to open things up.
Note that while this does mean that the areas that you are looking to solve puzzles in are fairly limited, it doesn't mean they're small.
No.
It just means that there are parts of the stage that it's not.
Yeah. And these action sequences will ramp up. It's like, you'll be dealing with like 2 agents in the beginning chapters, but like by the end of the game, you'll be dealing with not just like 5 agents at once, but also they'll bring in helicopters.
Ooh. Yeah, that sounds like it could get tricky because the controls aren't great, and while you're dodging, usually what you have to do to get out of them is grab a thumbtack that's out of the zone that they're patrolling. And you have to be pretty solidly on the ground for that to work, I've found. You can't really mind arm when you're in the air.
It's less intimidating than you think, because I mean, they even lampshade the helicopters, go back in very predictable patterns.
Okay.
Trust me.
So it's just a patrol guard thing, and you can avoid being seen by it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I'll be honest. If I'm not sure if it's the game's main problem, but it's definitely an issue. Difficulty. This game is pretty easy. Not gonna lie.
It is.
It's like, I mean, you will get some challenge, but there's nothing here that's gonna be too, thumb bleedingly difficult.
For example,
not
the stickers can only stick in the correct spot. I was
Right.
slightly disappointed at that because it means you
Yeah.
generally can't like get funny things for doing multiple things or the wrong thing. But on the other hand, that means you don't have to go back and get the sticker again.
I'm like, and as far as like the point and click elements, it really doesn't evolve past the initial premise. Like to the final chapter, you will be doing the same thing. I mean, obviously, it's going to get more and more elaborate. Dealing with more action spaces. But like I said, it's it's nothing that's going to prove to be difficult.
Yeah, nothing in this one make you pull your hair out, basically.
No, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but like I said, I just found this game a little too easy. I'm being
So
honest.
did I.
Now, and it's not a long game either. Like, the game is about 10 chapters. Like, if you just blaze through it, you'll probably be done about 2 to 3 hours. Like, if you take your time, because there is a reward system, in the form of reading people's minds. Like,
Yeah, a lot of people have funny things they're thinking or whatever.
it's also your 100% completion is making sure you read everybody's mind in a level.
There were a couple of people I couldn't get to that I could see that you could read their mind potentially, but I couldn't figure out how to get close enough.
It's like, I'm not sure if there's any actual reward for getting 100% completion, because I'll be honest, I couldn't be arsed to do it, especially since like a lot of the levels it was like, oh, you missed one person. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to go through the absolute tedium of tracking down the one person I missed.
Also, there are a lot of people.
Yeah, it's like about 25 people per stage.
And some of these people are dogs or pipe alligators or
like, I think the people I kept missing were like the actual agents. I kind of wanted to,
because it's hard to read their minds a lot of the time because if they notice you, they start chasing you.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. Though not every level is structured the same. Like, you've got like currently in the video feed, we've got one of Ray's dream sequences, which is a lot. Which some of them can be a lot more straightforward. Like, the third one was much more action oriented than the previous one. That's when it turns into a nightmare, and then you're dealing with, literal nightmares in the form of giant agents who will, do the same thing that they always do.
Only bigger?
Yes. I'm like, if I can compare it, it's, if you played like say a 16-bit platform game, and you get to the auto scroll level, like you're being chased by, say, a bear or a stampede of deer or something like that. That's that level. Like,
Like Lion King, for example.
Yes, something like that.
Yeah.
Only instead of like a overhead view, it's like to the side.
Yeah, side angled.
Yeah, it was still a nice effect though.
It is.
I think the game's strongest point is its story and its humor.
Yeah, and the aesthetic is pretty neat too.
Yeah, although in all honesty, it's pretty ugly. Like, obviously intentionally so, but
Yeah, no, it's definitely a style that's trying to be kind of
Hmm.
Charmingly ugly.
Yes.
Hmm.
Also worth noting that the man is an actual character. He actually showed up on screen. Like,
Yeah, he is. At least initially, he's always in black silhouette, but
yeah, no, I
He
will say,
always is.
yeah, he will stay in silhouette throughout the entire adventure.
Hmm.
yeah, I wasn't sure if maybe he showed his face at the very end, but I'm not surprised he doesn't.
Yeah. And it's worth noting that story and gameplay mechanics are actually fairly well integrated. Like, the spaghetti arm isn't just a thing in the game. Um, it's a thing that only like Ray can see, and it's literally driving him mad.
Because of the thing in his head, presumably.
Well, it's because he doesn't know what to, he thinks he's hallucinating, and he's like literally losing his mind.
Ah, yes, hallucinations that let you sort of teleport and let you read people's minds. Very. This also has very tongue-in-cheek humor.
Yeah, I'm like, honestly, if there's a game that reminds me of, it's Psychonauts.
Yeah,
I
even
can
down
see
to the
that.
art style.
Yeah, I'm like, I describe it as Psychonauts light because I mean, obviously, it's not, you know, it's nowhere near the level of Psychonauts in any regard. That's not a disparaging remark. It's just this is a um, simple downloadable puzzle platformer versus a fully featured. Uh, Granted, it was for the Xbox, but it was still a fully featured console game, a 3D
Mhm.
platform. It's like, as far as the style of humor goes, yeah, this is definitely not going to be everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah, it can get twisted at times.
Yeah, I mean, like, here we have literal gallows humor being played on the screen right now.
Yeah,
Like,
it's very early in the game of. I need a ride home, but the only taxi guy I can find is trying to hang himself.
mhm.
Better do something about that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I suppose that's also a note that even though it looks pretty lighthearted, if grungy at first, but yeah, this goes to some dark places.
Hmm.
It's still comedically tongue in cheek, but it's still not something I'd probably recommend for young kids.
Hmm.
Hmm.
You know, may like like probably E10 and up.
Does
I'm
this
not
actually
sure.
have a? As I say, does this actually have a rating?
I'm like, it actually does. It has, it's PEGI rating is 12 and its ESRB rating is teen. Like, that sounds about right. I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
you know,
Teen is a very sort of variable category, but
right. But yeah, that's, it's like, in terms of our ratings, that's about where I'd put it.
Yeah.
Maybe a little less. You know, but I guess to err on the side of caution. Like, let's see, the music was definitely one of the big surprises of Stick It to the Man. Mainly because I wasn't expecting like the big band jazz stuff. You know,
Yeah,
mhm.
it's like,
it worked.
it did.
yeah, well, yeah, it definitely worked. It's just I wasn't expecting a lot of wah wahs and trumpets and stuff. Like all of a sudden it's the Voodoo Vince soundtrack all over again. It's doubly interesting because this isn't this is a game that was made in Sweden.
Yeah, I was curious about that. I knew I could tell it was definitely not English first language, but
Yeah. Well, it definitely shows in the humor. Like it's definitely closer to British humor than say anything on North American soil.
yeah.
But I wouldn't call it exactly British humor either. It's like British humor tends to be drier than Stick It to the Man.
Hmm.
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 So make of that what you will. You know, but the humor is kind of one of the, if not the primary drive of playing this game. You know, I like I suppose if I had to boil it down, like I found Stick It to the Man a better experience than a game because
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
it's like because as a game it's pretty perfunctory.
Yeah, it's mostly like a story that you're experiencing rather than.
Yeah, I mean it's mechanics and it's gameplay and all of that stuff. They're so okay, it's average.
Yeah, it's generally, and everything is generally extremely linear.
Yeah, you know the like it's like playing an adventure game on that level as well. You're not really playing it for say the necessarily the puzzles, but so much the story or the characters or the humor.
Mm-hmm.
That that's what's driving this game.
Definitely.
Now, Betty Fan, you've been playing the game, so what are your opinions on it thus far?
I do agree with the jumping thing. It is kind of clunky.
Mhm. It's especially hard when you're trying to like jump above and you get like stuck under a platform because that happened to me more than once.
Same here.
And it's like it could use like some sort of method to keep track of things, like if you have multiple objectives going on.
I suppose.
But that's more of a me being into more modern games thing.
Well, I mean, this is a fairly modern game.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it came out, you know, a few years ago, but it came. It's available on like the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Granted, you can also find it on some older systems. Like, it got an PlayStation 3 release, a Wii U release, actually.
I didn't know that.
Me neither.
Yeah. Like, I'm not exactly sure how it used the game, the gamepad.
I would imagine stuff already had touch controls.
Yeah, it's like I can definitely imagine how it's laid out.
Actually, I think the Wii U control gamepad controls is probably one of the better ways you could do this, because using the control pad or control stick and buttons for jumping is definitely preferable to WASD.
Mhm.
No offense to anybody who disagrees with me.
Well, it's like I'm using a DualShock 4 controller.
Right, but I can see the click and drag being a little bit more efficient than using the right stick to sort of aim in the general direction of a thing and then click a shoulder button and then
Yeah,
like move and pull and stuff.
Also,
certainly,
apparently you can go in different planes of this.
Yeah, the world is cardboard, it's not flat paper.
Ah.
So sometimes there will be a thumbtack that's either in the foreground or in the background, and you can jump a little bit further forward or backwards.
Sometimes you have to unlock a thumbtack.
Yeah, there are some thumbtacks. Usually they're usable. They're usually the kind that you see sometimes in platforming games where you revisit areas where once you get through a thing, you do a thing that makes it easier to get back there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and if you're looking for a portable experience in regards to Stick It to the Man, it is on the PlayStation Vita as well.
And that would probably have full touch, definitely.
Yeah, kind of a tiny screen though.
Yeah,
From what I've heard, the Vita isn't that bad for stuff like this if they do the resolution right.
Right.
Like, I don't think anyone here has a Vita, so
No, I keep wanting to get one, and then I keep remembering how much the Sony memory cards cost, and I'm like, I may want Japanese weird games, but I don't want them that many dollars.
Well, if you get the 2000 model, it comes with a gigabyte of memory installed, so...
I'm like, do you know how much Sony memory cards are?
Oh, yeah,
Like-
I have a PSP. I know exactly how much they are. They're expensive.
Like ridiculously so. Like I
I
think
know. Let's make a proprietary format, and then we can charge as much as we want.
I'm like, I think that's one of the main reasons why the Vita never took off. I'm being serious too. But yeah,
And it's not like SD cards didn't exist.
The funny
No.
story about the Vita memory cards, they're basically micro SD card with pins swapped.
Anyway, platform gimmicks aside, this game should be pretty uniform across the board. Although worth noting, it was built in Unity.
Yeah, I noticed this game was running my computer a little harder than I expected from the graphics.
Yeah.
But
So-
I think this is a game that doesn't suffer that much from using lower graphics settings.
No. Plus, it's it's a 2D platformer. Like those, usually those tend to be all right when using the Unity engine.
Yeah, and
you
it's
have to screw up real hard.
Yeah, and it's extremely highly stylized. So
It's not so much you have to screw up really hard. It's like you have to be like really high fidelity. And I'm looking at you, Ori and the Blind Forest.
Yeah, didn't they have to patch to fix that?
They had to release a new edition to fix the slowdown problems.
Jeez.
And I can attest to that as somebody who put into about like 40, 50 hours into Ori and the Blind Forest. It's like great game, but the slowdown was pretty noticeable. Anyway, let's see. Price. So this is probably another major downfall of the game. At least its base price. It's $15. I'll say it right now. This game isn't worth $15
because it's short.
Yeah, it's really short, and it's really, it's so mechanically average. I can't ignore those things. Even though it's got a lot of character and personality and all that stuff.
Yeah, you might, if you really like this kind of game and thing, that might be on the very upper end of what you think is acceptable.
Now, that being said, I have seen this game on sale several times, ranging from about $7.50. I think the lowest I saw was about $5. And at that price range, Joe, definitely recommended.
Yeah, I think 10 is probably a more reasonable price for this than 15.
Yeah.
Like most people, I would recommend trying it at 10.
Yeah. Especially since, this is going to be on the subjective side. Also worth noting, there is only the base version. You can get the soundtrack on Spotify, I believe, but you can't purchase it like on Steam or anything, or it's not available on Steam.
Is it expensive on Spotify? I don't know how
Spotify
works.
is a streaming service, so you can't actually own it.
Ah, okay. You can just listen to it.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, like I'm looking at the link right here. Listen to the soundtrack on Spotify. So, and that is the only link as far as the soundtrack goes. Like,
You haven't seen if it's like on Bandcamp or anything like that.
well, it's like I'm on the Zoink Games website for the game. So I think if they had it, they link to it, or at least I'd hope so. That's what. That's where I'm seeing the Spotify link. Okay.
Right.
Let's see. Anything else we need to cover? I mean, I guess maybe the voice acting. Like,
the voice acting is generally good, but the fake accents are not.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah.
Like when they're just going for a normal voice or a funny voice, the acting is pretty solid. But man, those are some terrible fake accents. I think they are intentionally terrible, but that doesn't make them not terrible.
Right.
Like the really terrible fake French cook.
At least as a game, you're not supposed to take too seriously.
True enough. True enough. I'm like, I think you can turn the voice acting off.
You
can.
can, yeah, you can turn all the volume off.
If nothing else, you can turn the music, sound effects, and voice acting volume down separately.
Just
Right.
something to note about that, because I had the stuff muted for a little bit on there. It still has the walking sound effect playing.
That's weird.
Yeah, I think it's just a bug,
I don't
but
know,
it
it's-
is something to note if you are, want to play us on mute for whatever reason.
I'm like, there are reasons why you'd want to do that.
Like
Now,
this.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Anyway, so I think that'll about do it for Stick It to the Man. Any final thoughts on the game?
It's a
I
game.
enjoyed it. I think it would be good for people to check out, but yeah. Do
Yeah.
it when it's at a price you find appropriate for this kind of game.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. As we already said, it's definitely the game you want to play for the characters and story. That's what's pretty much going to hold on to you to the end.
Like I said, the stuff that's really holding it back is, um, you know, the bland mechanics and really the length. That's the one that really gets me because, like I said, you can complete this pretty damn quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, for $15, I'm like, that's a little much. So,
It's one of those, if
But-
it had like New Game Plus options or something like that, maybe, but
yeah, or maybe even more interesting collectibles. Like I just didn't find the need to, go out and hear every silly thoughts process in the game. Now, like, all right, so that'll do it. Be sure to tune in for our next review, a game called Cooking Witch. Like,
That
This
witch sure
is-
does cook.
I'm like, it is quite literal. More on that in about half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So until such time, I wish you good gaming.